Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's McCreepers, and welcome back to another video. Today I will be doing a in-depth review of Yhwach, and what this will consist of is all his stats, what his attacks looks like, what his passives are, what his abilities are, and some recommendations I have when using the unit. Starting off, Yhwach is a cosmic unit who has a max placement of 3, making Monarch his best trait. He costs a total of 67,500 yen to fully max out, which if you want to max out 2, that'll be 135,000, and then if you want to max out all 3, it would cost 202,650 yen. With Z plus damage, Z SBA, and Z plus range, his placement stats will be 2.9k damage every 4.5 seconds, and was 25.7 range. He will unlock his second attack at upgrade 2, which will cost a total of 5,400 yen, and now we'll be doing 3.85k damage every 5.4 seconds with 26.9 range. At upgrade 8, he will unlock his third attack, and at this point it will cost a total of 32,650 yen, and will be doing 6.84 thousand damage every 7.2 seconds and have 30.4 range. At upgrade 11, which is also his final upgrade, he unlocks his fourth attack as well as his ability, which I'll get into later. At this point, he costs 67,500 and will be doing 29.83k damage every 9 seconds with 42.1 range. Moving on, I'm going to start going over his passives. So his first passive is called Almighty, and this one is really easy to understand. He is immune to all status effects and ailments, while also making it so that he gains 5% damage every single time he dodges a status effect or ailment, with a max of 30%. His second passive is called The Man Who Saw the Future, and this allows him to attack the last enemy in his AoE or range with another attack. And it might be a little bit confusing at first, but I assure you it's pretty easy to understand. And it also has to be a different enemy. The first enemy has to be different from the last enemy in his range. So I want you to see here is you can see this passive in work right now on his last attack. And essentially what you're really looking at here is you'll see that during his first attack, he walks up to the very first unit, and then pretty much after he done with that, his first attack animation, you'll see him do a follow-up animation where he walks toward the very end of his range, or the last enemy in his range, or yeah, pretty much the last enemy on the map, and do a follow-up attack. And the thing is with this is that it looks like he's constantly doing attacks after another because of how this passive works. But in all actuality, if without that passive, it would be there would be a delay in between attacks. But because of how it worked, it looks like when one attack is finished, another attack starts, and it's just a chain here. But when you play in game, it'll probably realistically be one attack. You might get a second attack, but more likely or not, it's probably just going to be only one attack at a time with probably around a 5-second delay. So it won't look as insane as this. So the reason why this is obviously good is that, realistically speaking, if you are able to get that passive activated, he essentially does 2 times damage on his last attack because he's full AoE. So he'll be hitting every unit twice, or every enemy twice, not just one. So obviously it's kind of just a budget Gogeta, but a lot worse if we're being honest. So next up we have his third passive, which is also his ability, and it's called Ashfallen. And this is also locked behind upgrade 11, which is also his last upgrade. His passive makes it so he gains a 5% range every single time you activate it, up to 20% range. Now, his ability will be pretty simple, but before I actually explain his ability, his maxed out stats before the help of any other units or his ability will be 38.78k damage every 9 seconds with 42 range. So how Ashfallen works is that it's essentially a toggle between 2 different things. Your first toggle will nerf the Yhwach's damage while buffing the other ally units in his range, while his second toggle debuffs the other allies in exchange for buffing himself. So the first one is pretty explanatory. Yhwach will lose 30% of his damage in exchange for boosting every single other unit in his range damage by 15%. But I believe it has to be your own unit. It will not work on other people's, from what I know. But I may be wrong. Now, his second ability, or toggle essentially, is what it will do is it grants Yhwach 10% damage and 5% range for every single one of your units that are in his range. But in exchange for that, every single unit in his range will lose 20% damage and 10% range. But once again, it has to be your own unit. It won't affect other people's units. So the reason... the ability on paper seems really simple, but as you can see, the video is still a lot longer. And if you're wondering why, well, the ability's broken or bugged right now, I should say, which, surprise, surprise, is anime Vanguards, let's be real. So you'll see once you have your Yhwach maxed out to level upgrade 11, if you sell or place a unit, it activates his ability even without you clicking on it. So essentially, you can just be rapidly switching in between without your own command. It's like it's not supposed to happen, obviously. And this isn't really a problem if you only plan on using him for the 15% damage buff, or if you have Monarch on him, since you can just manually switch it back to what you want it to be after you're done placing the unit or selling the unit. So it's not that big a deal. The problem comes when you use multiple Yhwachs. Because the problem is, if you have multiple Yhwachs down and you get them all maxed out, and let's say you activate one of the Yhwach's abilities, so that makes it so that he's being a damage buffer, essentially what happens is, essentially all the other units will get plus 15% damage, he gets minus 30% damage. But the problem is, as you accidentally sell a unit or place a unit, you will see that damage, it turned on the ability for every single Yhwach. So essentially, that one unit that was initially debuffing will be now, or not debuffing, buffing the allies will now be buffing himself. So he essentially takes away he takes away stats from the other Yhwachs who are now also buffing the allies. So you'll see that Yhwach, the two Yhwachs that were initially, you didn't have any ability activated on them, are now doing 0.5%, or not 0.5, half of the damage they're supposed to be doing. So it just makes the whole syncing them all together a pain in the ass. So what I recommend doing, especially if you plan on placing down multiple Yhwachs, what you should do is first place down all your units that you plan on using before you fully upgrade your Yhwachs, except for 2 units. You want to keep essentially 2 units. It can be the same unit, it's just you need to be able to place down 2 units. So essentially what you're going to do is, once you have all your units down except for 2 of them, you're going to want to fully max out your Yhwachs. And how you're going to control your Yhwachs is with the units. Those 2 units left over, you're going to place 1 down if you want them to be supporting, they're buffing your allies, which I highly don't recommend, because if you're using multiple Yhwachs, you're using them for damage. So switch them to damage, you place down your second unit, and you'll see now all 3 of them are completely synced up, doing the max damage possible. And you can see with 11 units down inside Yhwach's AoE or range, Yhwach's doing about 65k damage every 9 seconds, and that's for 3 of them, which is really good, because essentially every single time all 3 of them attack, that's 180k damage in total. Not to mention that there's a chance of it doing 2 times damage, which will make it, if that were to happen, you were able to somehow proc every single one of them with the set follow-up attack, it will be a total of 380,000 damage, which is a lot. So you can see why he's kind of busted to an extent, especially when you consider the fact he only costs around 70,000 to fully max out, versus other DPS units typically cost a lot more. albeit you probably need multiple Yhwachs. You can't use only one Yhwach fully maxed out unless you obviously have Monarch. If you don't have Monarch on him, I would highly recommend either only using him for his support ability or going balls deep into him, and make sure you have 3 of them if you can fully maxed out, just so you can make the most of his ability. That's obviously going to be for like people who don't have Monarch, or you know, have a serial on him and you know they don't have anything better. But yeah, I mean that's kind of how he works. So let me know what you guys think of him in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one.